Hello, hello, and welcome to the All In podcast with Nate Pao. Of course, I am your host, Nate Pao. My guest today is Clement Kao. Clement is the co-founder at Product Manager HQ, a community dedicated to providing career advice for aspiring product managers and experienced product managers. He's written more than 70 best practice articles and has been a featured speaker and writer for more than 50 different organizations. Outside of Product Manager HQ, Clement is a product manager at Blend, a San Francisco-based startup that partners with lenders and technology providers to reimagine consumer finance. In the last 3 years, Clement has launched 4 multi-million-dollar products, and he's actively tackling new problem areas to unlock the next generation of multi-million-dollar products. Welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate being here.
Yeah, thanks. So that's kind of cool. 4 million in products, and you're looking to do more of that. Like, what's your background? What led you to doing what it is you're currently doing in the product management world?
Yeah, fantastic question. So first, just taking a quick step back of, what is it that I do as a product manager, right? Really, what I do is first, I really try to understand what are the problems that my customers are facing, right? So at Blend, we're helping financial institutions have better consumer experiences for being able to do mortgages, auto loans, personal loans, et cetera, right? So really, my focus is on lenders, financial institutions, as well as those consumers, really understanding what are their pain points, what are the things that they wish could be better, what could be smoother, et cetera. And then basically taking these problems, prioritizing them, and putting them in front of my engineering and design teams to say, hey, what's a solution that we can deliver to make these problems go away, right? And then from there, then working with my business team to figure out, okay, well, how can we price ourselves? What are the ways in which we can make this offering go to market so that we can actually go serve these customer needs sustainably, right? So really my job is, again, to like work with customers to understand what are their pains, figure out with software engineers and software designers, what is the thing that we want to build and deliver, and then work with the business to figure out how do we want to price this, how do we want to go to market so we can go solve those pains. So really that's what I do as a product manager. And honestly, it was super accidental. So I actually have a background in biology, which isn't super traditional for being a software product manager in fintech, right? I think the way that I kind of wound up in product management was almost entirely by accident. I think as a biologist, I think more like a scientist of, hey, there are all these different systems that are all tied together, right? When you do one thing here, it changes this thing down here. I'm kind of very far away from each other. And so one of the things that I found was when I first graduated from college, I was helping, different businesses basically implement their software for their customers. And I started noticing, hey, I want to be a part of this process too. Like I want to be able to create these digital solutions to make other people's lives better, right? And so kind of bringing my systems thinking into play of just, hey, if you change this one button here, or if you create this new functionality there, how does that actually change the whole process for the business and for that business's customers? I think it's something that I've been really interested in doing. So that's why I'm just really passionate about product management and just tackling software in general. So yeah.
Very cool. So, I mean, you talked a little bit about getting a customer's pain point and then
Mm-hmm.
implementing a solution for them. And I've been in this spot before where I worked for a company and we said, hey, we have this problem and it needs to be solved, but I'm not sure how to solve it. I just know it sucks. And so how do you go and what would end up always happen be like, here's the solution. We'll do this integration, we'll do this stuff and we'll make it better or we'll make it work. How do you determine like what is, hey, we're just solving this band-aid problem versus
Mm-hmm.
going like, hey, as a consumer, you have this problem, not because A plus B equals D and you want to equal C, but the whole equation is wrong. You should be doing X, Y equals Z. And
Right.
people don't understand that like, hey, sometimes you're looking at the problem completely different. You're going, I have this problem, solve this solution, but it's like, no, that's the band-aid. How do you determine where you're at in the problem solving world, and so you're not just doing band-aids but you're actually treating symptoms?
Yeah, for sure. Um, Super great question. I think, the problem actually runs both ways, right? Like sometimes you try to solve, a problem too much at the surface level and you're not really solving the real problem. But sometimes if you go way too abstract, right? Like at the end of the day, any business wants to earn money. Any customer wants to feel happy, right? And so if you get way too abstract, you're not actually solving a targeted pain. And so it's really making sure that you're dialing in on the right level of how deep you want to go, right? I think that's really, how do I phrase it? When customers come to us of, hey, like I've got this problem, I think one of the things that's really important is to first say it back to them, right? Like, okay, so I understand that you currently have this problem and this problem impacts your business because whatever. And they'll say, yes, exactly. That's right. And that's a problem because XYZ, right? So they themselves, when they hear you saying it back to them, they're actually listening to it for the first time almost. And they're saying, actually, I don't think you have it right. Like, that's not really the problem that I wanted to solve. That's just the problem that I told you about, right? So one of the things that's super helpful is just telling back to a customer the pain that they thought they were telling you and see whether that's still the thing that they want you to solve. The second part is really, in working with engineers and designers, right? Like when we're trying to figure out what's something that could solve this problem, we really want to bring our customers into the mix as co-collaborators, right? Like we're not thinking of them as, oh, you're just someone that we sell to. We really want to actually partner with them to really understand, is this thing actually going to work, right? So when we show this to them, we say, hey, here is this really high level mockup. We haven't built a single line of code. We haven't done anything yet. This is the way that we're headed. And we believe that these different things solve these pain points that you told us about on this call. They'll say, not really, because XYZ or like ABC or whatever. They'll actually go to the right level of abstraction and we'll say, oh, okay. So it looks like you actually want us to tackle this different problem that you just hadn't vocalized yet before. And they're like, yes, exactly. We want to go to that level instead, right? So I think one of the things that's really important is just to keep speaking back to the customer as you're trying to figure out a solution. Is this actually solving the thing that you want, right? Like just repeating back to them your understanding of the problem and see whether it still resonates. And if it's changed, totally fine, because sometimes customer priorities change, customer framings change, right? Like sometimes they want to tackle a different problem. Totally okay. We're flexible with that, right? So basically just making sure that we repeat back to the customer our understanding over time to make sure that we're actually tackling the right level of problem. Because you're exactly right. Like sometimes if someone says, I want you to move this button, it's like, we can, but like, is that actually the thing that will make your business better, right? And sometimes they say, actually, the reason why I wanted to move this button is because of this inefficiency elsewhere. And we can say, we can solve that, right? And so by partnering with customers and by making sure that we're empathizing with them deeply and repeating back their understanding as many times as we can, that's what really ensures that we're tackling the problem at the right level, kind of rather than way too shallow.
Mm-hmm. That's a very applicable lesson to learn, because a lot of times when we're describing pain, we don't identify it correctly. And so we're telling people, we think we're telling people this story that they understand. And really they're only hearing the words coming out of the mouth, but they don't see everything that the person knows about. Like if I'm in pain, oh, it hurts right here. But I know like how it all came. I know everything about it, and I know where if I move a certain way, it's going to make it feel worse, feel different. And if I just tell you like, hey, this hurts, well, it could be many different things. So I think
Exactly.
one of the books I like reading about is about the alignment of your business with what you're talking about doing is pain versus claim. Is your pain in alignment with your claim? And I think that's told in the sense of like, hey, if I'm selling you a product, does this pain point get solved the way and does the way I describe it solve it in the way that it actually works? And if they're in alignment, you're going to be very happy. And if they're not in alignment, as a consumer, you're not going to be happy. But this is almost like the flip flop. This is like, hey, I'm coming to you. I need you to solve a problem. Is the problem being explained to you in the way that the pain point can be solved? So it's kind of a little backwards way, but it's still pretty cool application for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, to be honest, right, like because we're typically interfacing with pretty senior executives at these financial institutions, right? Typically, they'll be more thoughtful or more vocal in terms of the way that they're expressing the pain, and they're going to be more they're going to take more steps to really go think through, okay, what pain did I just say, and is that actually the thing that my business needs, right? I think, and that's kind of the magic of me working in business to business products. I think when you're working in business to consumer products, right, I think no one would have told anyone, right, like I want an iPhone, right? Like back in the day, people wanted like music players and phones. Like you had all these different devices that did all these different things, and no one wanted them all to be the same device. Like that was an insane thought. And yet Apple came up with the iPhone, right? And so I think for business to consumer products, it can be a lot harder to repeat back to a customer, to a consumer, and for the consumer to say, actually, that's not the pain I wanted to solve. I think it's much easier when you're working in the enterprise, where you have these very seasoned industry veterans who really understand where they're coming from and what their actual pain is, to help refine that. And so I think you're exactly right? Like ideally, if you are hearing if you have a business claim, right, like you really want to make sure that that actually aligns with a customer's pain. Whereas that really works, when you're working in business to consumer. Whereas when you're working with business to business, right, sometimes those industries move in different ways that you might not expect. And so it's really important to actually have them tell you the pain and then like try to repeat that back rather than trying to assert what the pain is and then convincing them that that's actually the pain. So I think it just comes to a level of sophistication from the kind of customer you're working with. Some of them are very sophisticated and can speak very clearly about the pains that they're facing. And some of them, because they can't really do that, you have to go and iterate very quickly through all of these different prototypes or all of these different designs or different offerings to see whether the disruptive thing that you are delivering actually does solve the pain of the
Mm-hmm. Good stuff. So I want to switch gears a little bit on you. I want to talk about
Sure.
your product manager HQ. So I'm a big advocate of networking. I'm a big advocate of joining communities, learning from people, getting to know your peers, getting to know people upper in like further along in their career as you, also talking with people that are coming up in their career. What has been your experience with building a community, and why did you decide to set out and co-found that community?
Yeah, fantastic question. So Product Manager HQ is a global community of PMs. Currently, we've got 9,000 plus paid members as part of our community, and they range from all the way from aspiring PMs, people who have never heard of product management, all the way to heads of product, CEOs, etc. And I think really the reason why I started PMHQ alongside my co-founder Kevin is that we were trying to solve our own pains, right? Like we were basically our own customers, where at the time we didn't really know who to reach out to, right? I think one of the challenges is product management, like software product management, is a pretty new space still. It's not something that's typically taught in school. It's not something where there are a lot of people who have done it before. And so we didn't necessarily get the support that we needed within our own communities or within our own firms at the time. And so when we were trying to solve our own pain, we said, okay, well, how can we find other people to go talk to our problems about, right? And so kind of that started us reaching out to other peers at other companies or at other events to try to bring them in so that we can actually talk about, hey, here's the problem that I'm working on. Tell me about the problem that you're working on, right? Like two heads is better than one. Let's try to tackle this together so that we can start compiling these different learnings and kind of spread all of that knowledge across the community, right? And so kind of the way that we started was very much just starting at kind of like this like peer-to-peer level of similar levels of experience. I think from there, kind of over time, we of course started to have folks who wanted to join kind of from an aspiring PM perspective, because they're like, oh, well, you guys clearly understand product management, right? So kind of that's when we started to reach out to folks who are more junior to basically bring them into the community so that way we were able to pay it forward and mentor. And one of the things that we heard from them is, well, it's great that you guys have all of this experience, but we really love to have folks who are even more experienced, right? Like we are really looking for some of the industry titans to come talk about product management. And so that's how we started our Ask Me Anything series, with folks such as Ellen Chitha, right? Like with folks like Ken Norton, right? Like just really large product management figures, so that we had these very senior level folks being able to talk about their real experiences and basically paint the picture 10 years, 15 years, 20 years ahead of where everyone else was going to be right now, right? And so kind of that's how we kind of extended that outward. And that's how we've been able to kind of reach upwards as well as kind of reach more broadly to folks who aren't yet part of product management. Mm-hmm. And so I think really there are a couple of core drivers here, right? Like part one is, I think one of my friends said this really crisply, which is product management is a lot like practicing comedy, right? Like you can't really read any textbooks about comedy. You just have to go watch other performers do it and learn from their experiences and just do it yourself in terms of doing stand-up comedy, right? And product management is very similar to that. And so one of the things that senior product managers really want to do over time is they want to be able to pay it forward because someone had paid it forward to them when they were first aspiring to become product managers, right? So kind of all of the more senior product managers have this drive to give back, but don't necessarily know the right outlets to give back in. And kind of then you have the folks who are really interested in learning more, but don't really know where to go to learn more. And so PMHQ is meant to be that community where people who want to give back can give back, and people who want to grow and learn can jump in and kind of access that really top talent to be able to pick their brains of, well, how do I actually go tackle this work problem that I currently have in product management, right? Like, how do I actually go tackle this data analytics problem? Or how do I tackle, dealing with this customer objection? Or how do I integrate these different things together, right? Kind of all of those conversations are part of our community, and we're really proud of that.
Yeah. So you talked about it being a community. Mm-hmm. How long has it been around? And what were the things you learned as you were doing this? Like, building a community, because I'm not quite sure if you set out with the intention of like, hey, I want to build this community and intentionally do it, which is on itself your own set of circumstances to learn. But then there's a whole nother different circumstances when you go, hey, I just want to create a place where we can pass a couple of questions around, and all of a sudden the community takes on a life of its own, and you manage that too. So what were the things you learned or learned along the way of building a community? What are the lessons that you learned the hard ways, and what are some of the things you would have chose to do differently?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. So I think one of the things that, so you're exactly right. Kind of the product manager HQ community really grew organically. I don't know that we actually tried to make it, a gigantic community or a super niche community, just that it kind of spun up on its own, just based on us tackling our own pains as product managers and then finding that really deep resonance across a lot of other product managers across the world, right? So I think that was just an almost lucky stroke of product market fit, of really being able to solve our users' needs. But in terms of some of the lessons that we had in terms of actually building out this community over time and maintaining it, I think one of the things that can be difficult is when there's almost this like marketplace in terms of people giving advice and people taking advice, right? And so when you think about a marketplace of advice, you have a supply side and a demand side, right? And the demand side, right? Like there's so many people who want to become product managers, right? And we have a lot of people who want to join because of that. But on the flip side, you have a limited supply of people who are able to give advice, because either there aren't that many senior people, or the people who are more senior, they're really busy with their jobs. They're really busy doing other things, and they're not able to give back as much as they'd like to. I think one of the things that I'd wish we had done a little bit better, and we're actively working on right now, is how do we formalize a better incentive structure to really empower the people who can give advice to give advice, right? I think one of the things that we previously relied on was a lot of goodwill, right? Like, I want to pay this forward just out of my own personal drive so that I feel good about myself, right? But the thing is, no matter where you go, your network is really important. Your credentials are important, right? Like your brand is really important. And that is just as true within product management, right? Like companies can't afford to take risks on unknown product managers. They're only willing to hire product managers that they know are going to be able to do the job well. And so, having something external facing, whether it's a blog post that says like, these are the kinds of things that this person did and here's why they were successful, right? Or some sort of award or some sort of event where someone is a speaker. Those are really great ways to boost someone's credibility. And we don't have enough of those within the PMHP community today. And we're actively working to solve that, right? I think we don't have enough ways for our best advice givers to give back in a way that makes sense with their time commitments, right? If we can balance the incentives a little bit better towards their way in terms of saying, this is a featured speaker, or, this is the featured, product manager of the month, or, this person is leading this workshop, or, this person is being featured on some article, we believe that will help to incentivize people more when you have this kind of advice marketplace. Of course, you won't necessarily see that within all sorts of communities, right? I think in more kind of, entrepreneurship communities where people are all trying to launch together or all trying to get feedback, you don't necessarily see that very clear divide between, advice givers versus advice takers. But kind of within our community, given that there is some level of seniority there, you do kind of see that split. And so I wish we'd done a little bit more to help out on the supply side to make it more worth people's time to go give that advice, not just out of the goodwill of their own hearts, because that's still really important, but also making sure it's actually worth their time to go do versus all the other competing responsibilities that they have.
Yeah. And when you do stuff like out of the goodness of your own heart, it becomes when it's convenient for you and maybe not consistent. Right. Like, hey, I got a little free time this week, I will go do it. But then you're like, well, could you do a series on this, like, this knowledge base?
Exactly.
Like, no, I can't commit to doing every Thursday for 6 weeks. Like, I don't have it, even though it would be tremendous value. Right. And you might want to do it, but you just aren't going to find the time commitment. And you're right. Like, there is this level of givers and takers, and not in a bad way of like everybody's taking, but like, hey, and then what I've also noticed too is there's people that come to a spot in their career where they've been a consumer of education for a long time, and they're like, consume. And you go, wait a minute, like, you're in a spot where you need to switch into transition to become a mentor, a teacher, an educator, because you've consumed for all these years, so much more. I know you still want to get ahead. I know you think there's more you got to learn, but there's people that are coming up. They're not as far along in the journey as you that need that information. And so like, you're not going to go ask Steve Jobs, obviously not anymore, but like, hey, how do I, what do I do on my first week of a job as a product manager? He doesn't have the time for that level of,
Right.
education. But somebody that's been in that role for a year, they might think,
Exactly.
oh, I don't have anything to give back. And like, you do, because that's a lot of experience to have been in a new role for a year. And you could go explain to somebody that's been there for their first week on the job. And so it's important to get that knowledge, realize like, hey, everybody has a unique perspective and a little bit of knowledge they can share. For some people that it's not going to be relevant, but other people that aren't as far along, it is. And it's encouraging people to kind of go, hey, you probably got a little bit of knowledge that you don't think you have. Can you get out there and share it? So I totally had another question for you, and it slipped my mind after we started talking about that. But I don't remember. It'll probably come to me after
Still come back.
this. It had something to do with the community aspect of it, but oh well. Train of thought, lost it. Need to write them down as
No
I
worries.
go. So I remember now. Is you talked about it briefly of employers. They don't want to hire somebody that's unproven. They don't know if they're going to work. They want somebody that they know is going to work out. And Silicon Valley is probably a little bit more advanced than a lot of other industries along this way. But the idea of having a piece of paper with a resume that's got some words on it that says like, I did this or I didn't do this, with no proof in the pudding of, did you really, like, how, maybe that was, you were part of a team. How much were you a part of that team? Were you a contributor, or you kind of along for the ride? But people are doing more stuff on LinkedIn. They're doing these communities, these niche communities where they can show what they've done to solve problems in their industry expertise. So as somebody that's heading up a community, you're clearly a thought leader in the space, or people wouldn't be seeking out your advice and your group's advice. Like, what recommendations would you say to people of like, hey, how do you go about building, let's call it a personal brand, and maybe as a product manager, like building a personal brand sounds like, oh, that's stupid, I don't want to be on social media, or that's for salespeople or for CEOs. But as somebody that's maybe a bit more behind the scenes, like, how important is it to start building a personal brand to stand out in the workforce?
Yeah, great question. So I would say one of the things that is really critical to realize in today's economy is basically all of us are mini entrepreneurs, honestly, right? Like the way that I think of employers, our employers are simply longtime customers that happen to be exclusive customers, right? And so the thing is, even within one single employer, you might be tackling different kinds of work for them because you have different quote unquote internal customers. And so at the end of the day, you are in charge of your own fate. You're your own entrepreneur, you're your own boss in terms of, where do I want to work? What are the kinds of things that I want to do, and how do I want to get there, right? And it's all about making sure that you take this very customer oriented mindset of, which customer do I want to help? Who do I want to solve pain for? And taking it from there, basically. So I think one of the things that happens a lot is, for one, I think a lot of folks might think, hey, being a product manager, right? Like, I'm going to be internal to a company, right? Like, personal branding is not necessarily a thing that I need to worry about. Where I would say that's not necessarily true, because you need to remember that product managers are working with customers, engineers, designers, and business folks, right? And people need to trust that you're going to be able to fit into their culture. And so even if it's not necessarily personal brand in the way that you might think of a LinkedIn influencer, or you might think of, someone who is on Instagram or Snapchat or whatever, right? Like, there's still some aspect of brand in terms of, do you align with that company's values, right? Like, if you align with the company values and the company processes, they're more likely to take you than if you're someone who kind of doesn't mesh at all with the way that they work, right? So a really, really big company that puts a lot of emphasis on hierarchy, right? That's a very different place than a two-person startup that, wants to move really fast and doesn't really care what titles mean, right? A place that is really formalized in terms of process is totally different from a place where it's, make it up as you go, right? And so you need to make sure that whatever it is that you are sending out as, this is the type of stuff that I'm good at, resonates with the kind of employer that you want to go after, because at the end of the day, they're the customer and you're trying to demonstrate to them that you're going to be a good fit for them, right? And so I think when you take this more customer oriented approach of, my employers are actually customers and I'm trying to figure out what pain I solve from there, that actually makes things a lot clearer, right? Because then it's, oh, well, if I'm aiming for a business that does things in the business to business space, that's very different from working with a customer who's, working with a business that does business to consumer products, dealing with like hardware products versus software products, totally different, right? And so the thing is, personal brand is important. And what aspects of my personal brand should I be, asserting and emphasizing? There's no universal answer because every person is going to be better at going after particular kinds of customers and not as good at going after different kinds, right? So I think one of the things that, I've found within my community and within my audience is that I'm particularly skilled at business to business software products, specifically in highly regulatory areas. So for example, let's say real estate, consumer finance, those are the types of areas that I do really well in, right? Whereas, let's say, business to consumer, right? Like being able to do like A/B testing, being able to do, all of this different, growth hacking, what have you. Those things I'm not necessarily as good at. And that's okay, right? Because there are no universally popular products. Like as an example, we think of credit cards as being massively successful in the United States. They're basically not used in China, right?
Mm-hmm.
Similarly, when we think about, Snapchat, right? Like grandparents don't really use Snapchat, even though it is like the stock's been on fire, right? And so there are no universally good products. And so we shouldn't think of people as having to be universally good candidates. It's what's the type of employer that you want to attract, and then refining your brand presence to align with that. Whether that means I'm an engineer, so I'm going to make sure that my GitHub, right, is really, really full of all of the different, open source code that I've contributed to. If I'm a designer, right, like here are all of the design portfolios that I have to talk about, like this is the way that I brand myself and this is the way that I present myself. If you're a product manager, making sure that you can talk through what are the different problems that you've solved, right? And doing that, whether that's through webinars, doing that through articles, whatever, helps to prove to the employer, oh, this person's done it before, and they do it in a way that I need them to do it. So I'm going to take them versus any other unproven candidate, right? It's all about making sure that you minimize the distance between what your customer wants, which here is the employer, and what you have to offer, right? So I think kind of that meta mindset of thinking of your employers as your customers really, really goes a long way in helping you to figure out, okay, how do I want to position myself in terms of my branding?
That is a fantastic answer, and it's so thoughtful, super, not like a ton of great tidbits. And I think people aren't, at least I come from a construction background, so it's very like it's always like 10 years behind the times of what anybody else is doing. And so it's still very traditional resume, and here's my pedigree. And it's like those things are changing, and they're changing very quickly. And the way you work at a company is changing. Like it's
Absolutely.
not like, hey, you go work there for 20 years. It's like we have a project and we need somebody that's a skilled expert in this project for a very limited time, like 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. So they got to be right. They got to get up to speed quickly. We don't have the time to train them. And it's like, here you are going, am I the right candidate or not? So if you're putting it forward and you're doing these things where you're showcasing who you are and the skills you have, you're going to stand out. If you stand back and say, I don't need to do this, you're going to have a harder time attracting the right offers and the right candidates, because people aren't going to know who you are. And it really comes down to, who to get the door open for you, no matter what you're doing. So you were just kind of doing it in a digital space that you can do it a little bit more at scale versus, the old ways of who do you know in your Rolodex, which is kind of gone. So awesome stuff. So I want to move to my last question here, which is, what does it mean to you to be all in on an idea or an outcome?
Yeah, for sure. And so when I think about what all in means, it means just really staying true to what I believe in, right? And even if it's not what other people believe in, that's too bad. That's the thing that I believe is fundamentally true, and I'm going to go do that, right? So as an example, I could potentially make a bunch of money in terms of teaching, let's say, product management courses. But what I really want to do is I really want to make other people's lives better. I really want to be able to educate people at scale. And so I'm more than happy to be doing, unpaid podcasts, unpaid articles, all of these different ways in which I can share my knowledge to help other people grow, even though that's not earning me a bunch of money. And that's okay. I am all in educating other people, and not all in terms of maximizing the amount of money that I can make, right? So I'm really focused on how can I make other people's lives better by treating them as customers, by really digging deep into their pain points and really empathizing with them. So that's what all in means to me, is just staying true to, my thinking of I'm here to solve other people's problems, and that is what I am meant to do here on Earth, right? Less so, how can I benefit, and more so, how can I benefit others? And I'm just going to stick to that. So that's what all in means to me.
I love that answer. And it's quite different than I've heard before. And it's so true. It's like, what is it that you're all in on and what is not important, and keeping those true to yourself. So who exactly is, we talked a bit about a few things, doing product management, we talked about the community, but who is that ideal audience you're looking to get connected with, that's learning all this knowledge that you're sharing with people and helping them along the way?
Yeah, for sure. So the people that, I really want to be able to reach are the people who have ideas to make a better world, right? Like the people who want to bring their ideas to life, but don't really know how to do that yet. Those are the people that I want to reach, because product management, specifically software product management, is a way to go turn those ideas and validate that it's actually solving a problem in the real world and actually bring them to life through digital software. Like that is amazing. And so the way that I think about it is, anyone who has an idea of, I want to change the world in this way, even if it's a small way, right? Like I want these people to be able to hear what I have to say about how can you make sure that you are really understanding who your customer is, really understanding how to validate your idea and actually bring that idea to life. Because I really want to make as many people as possible be able to bring their dreams to life. So anyone who's got a dream, I'm really excited to be here as a resource and to help bring that dream to reality through software. So that's what I'm about.
Awesome stuff. So where can someone go if they want to get connected with you?
Yeah, for sure. So you can always find me on LinkedIn. You can type Clement Kao. I'm basically the only one there, I think. Not too many people with my name. You can also find me on Amazon. I've got a couple of books published under my name. So those are kind of the best places to find me.
Awesome stuff. So those will be all listed in the show notes. I encourage you to reach out to Clement, say hello. And if you do have a conversation with him, let him know you heard about him on the All In podcast with Nate Peo. So thanks so much for coming on the show. Had a great time chatting with you, and loved our conversation there about personal branding as somebody that maybe doesn't think that they need to create one.
Absolutely. Really appreciate the conversation. Thanks so much.